Some mysteries refuse to stay buried. Across history, strange discoveries, unexplained disappearances, and baffling events have left behind questions that no one has been able to answer. A group of green-skinned children who appeared from nowhere, tiny coffins hidden inside a hillside, an explorer who vanished deep in the Amazon rainforest, a powerful explosion that flattened millions of trees in Siberia, and lost tombs, forgotten secrets, and mysterious sightings that continue to puzzle historians to this day. Some of these stories may have ordinary explanations, others remain frustratingly unsolved. But all of them remind us that history is far stranger than we often imagine. Tonight, we'll journey through some of the most fascinating mysteries, legends, and unexplained events ever recorded. So sit back, relax, and let's uncover the historical mysteries that continue to defy explanation. The pyramid experiment that left researchers stunned. For centuries, one question has continued to puzzle historians, engineers, and archaeologists alike. How are the Great Pyramids actually built? The structures have stood on the Giza Plateau for more than 4,000 years. Their stones weigh several tons. Their alignment is remarkably precise, and even today, they remain among the most impressive construction projects in human history. Countless theories have been proposed, some simple, some extraordinary. But in 1978, a group of researchers decided to do something unusual. Instead of debating how the pyramids were built, they would try building one themselves. What followed became one of the most fascinating archaeological experiments of the 20th century, and the results raised as many questions as they answered. The project was organised by a Japanese research team led by Egyptologist Sakuji Yoshimura and funded for a television documentary. The goal seemed straightforward. Construct a scaled-down version of the Great Pyramid near Giza, using techniques believed to resemble those available to the ancient Egyptians. At first, the researchers were ambitious. The original plan called for a pyramid roughly 20 metres tall, using large stone blocks weighing several tons each. The team hoped to quarry the stone, transport it, and raise it into position using relatively simple methods. If successful, the experiment might provide valuable clues about how the ancient builders accomplished their incredible feat. Yet almost immediately, problems began to appear. Moving the stone proved far more difficult than expected. The team attempted to use traditional methods involving ropes, wooden supports, and human labour. Progress was slow, very slow. Tasks that appeared manageable on paper became exhausting challenges in practice. The difficulties forced the researchers to revise their plans. The pyramid had to be made smaller, the stone blocks had to be lighter. Even then, the work remained incredibly demanding. Transporting materials created another obstacle. Experiments involving wooden boats and primitive transport methods often failed or proved impractical. The team eventually relied on modern equipment simply to keep the project moving forward. As construction continued, the challenges only increased. Lifting stones into place became particularly frustrating. Workers could move the blocks only a short distance at a time. The effort required was immense. Eventually, the researchers found themselves relying on cranes and other modern machinery to complete portions of the project. For many observers, this outcome was surprising. After all, the experiment involved modern engineers, modern planning, and access to technology unavailable to the ancient Egyptians. Yet even a relatively small replica proved extraordinarily difficult to construct. The experience left a strong impression on those involved. Rather than making the pyramids seem less impressive, the project made them appear even more remarkable. Importantly, the experiment did not prove that the ancient Egyptians could not have built the pyramids. Archaeologists continue to believe that they did. Evidence from worker settlements, tools, quarries, and construction techniques strongly supports that conclusion. Instead, the experiment highlighted something else. It demonstrated just how enormous the challenge truly was. The builders of the Great Pyramid were not simply stacking stones. They were managing one of the most ambitious engineering projects in human history. Thousands of workers had to be organised. Materials had to be transported. Ramps, tools, and logistics had to function efficiently over many years. The scale of the achievement is difficult to appreciate until someone attempts even a small version of it. One reason the experiment continues to fascinate people today is that it sits at the intersection of archaeology and human curiosity. Most ancient mysteries can only be studied through excavation and analysis. This project attempted something different. It tested ideas through direct experience. Researchers discovered firsthand how difficult ancient construction could be. The results did not solve every mystery, but they offered valuable perspective. Even now, debates continue regarding the exact methods used at Giza. Different ramp designs have been proposed. Alternative transport techniques have been suggested. New discoveries occasionally add fresh pieces to the puzzle. Yet the 1978 experiment remains an important reminder that the pyramids were extraordinary achievements regardless of the methods employed. The project itself has become a small historical curiosity, a modern attempt to understand an ancient wonder, an experiment that began with confidence and ended with a deeper appreciation for the builders of the past. Near the shadow of the Great Pyramid, researchers once attempted to recreate one of history's greatest engineering achievements. What they discovered was not a simple answer, but a renewed sense of wonder, and a powerful reminder of just how remarkable the ancient world truly was, the mystery of the Tunguska event. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, something exploded above a remote forest in Siberia. There was no warning, no sign of approaching danger, and no witnesses who fully understood what they were about to see. Then, in an instant, the sky erupted. A blinding flash streaked across the horizon. Moments later, a massive explosion shook the wilderness. The force was so powerful that people hundreds of miles away reported seeing bright lights and feeling the ground tremble beneath their feet. Windows shattered, buildings shook, and across the forest near the Tunguska River, millions of trees were flattened. Yet when investigators eventually arrived, they discovered something deeply puzzling. There was no impact crater, no obvious source, and no clear explanation. More than a century later, the Tunguska event remains one of the most mysterious explosions in recorded history. The event occurred in one of the most remote regions on Earth. At the beginning of the 20th century, central Siberia was sparsely populated. Vast forests stretched for hundreds of miles. Small settlements were separated by enormous distances. Few people lived near the area where the explosion occurred. This isolation would later complicate efforts to understand what had happened. Eyewitness accounts varied, but many described similar scenes. People reported seeing a brilliant object moving rapidly across the sky. Some compared it to a second sun. Others described a glowing fireball followed by a tremendous shockwave. The explosion itself was extraordinary. Modern estimates suggest it released energy comparable to a large nuclear weapon. Yet this occurred decades before the invention of atomic bombs. The force flattened an estimated 80 million trees across more than 2,000 square kilometers of forest. Photographs taken years later revealed an astonishing landscape. Trees lay scattered across the ground like fallen matchsticks, their trunks pointed away from a central area. The pattern suggested a massive blast originating in the atmosphere above the forest. One of the strangest aspects of the disaster was the absence of an impact crater. When large objects strike Earth, they usually leave obvious scars. Meteorite impacts create craters. Fragments are often recovered. Evidence remains visible. At Tunguska, investigators found almost none of these things. The destruction was immense, but the source seemed to have vanished. Because of the region's remoteness, scientific expeditions did not reach the site immediately. Political instability and logistical difficulties delayed serious investigations for many years. When researchers finally began studying the area in the 1920s, they encountered a mystery unlike anything they'd seen before. The flattened forest clearly indicated a powerful explosion, yet the expected evidence was missing. This absence helped fuel decades of speculation. The leading explanation today is that a meteoroid or small asteroid entered Earth's atmosphere and exploded before reaching the ground. Travelling at tremendous speed, the object likely disintegrated several miles above the forest. The resulting airburst released enormous amounts of energy. This theory explains why there was no crater. The object never actually struck the surface. Instead, it exploded in the sky. Many scientists consider this the most likely solution, yet even this explanation leaves unanswered questions. Researchers continue debating the exact size, composition and trajectory of the object. Some believe it was a rocky asteroid. Others suggest it may have been an icy comet. Both possibilities remain under discussion. Over the years, more unusual theories emerged. Some suggested the explosion resulted from a hidden volcanic event. Others proposed strange natural phenomena. A few even connected the disaster to lost technology, extraterrestrial visitors, or secret experiments. Most of these ideas lack supporting evidence, but they demonstrate the enduring fascination surrounding Tunguska. Part of the mystery comes from the sheer scale of the event. An explosion of this magnitude occurring in a populated area would have caused catastrophic loss of life. The remote Siberian wilderness prevented that outcome. The forests absorbed the force. The isolation limited casualties. Humanity was fortunate. Had the object arrived a few hours later, Earth's rotation could have placed a major city beneath its path. One of the most intriguing consequences of the event occurred far beyond Siberia. In the days following the explosion, unusual atmospheric effects were reported across Europe and parts of Asia. Night skies appeared brighter than normal. People could reportedly read newspapers outdoors after sunset. Scientists believe fine particles released into the atmosphere may have scattered sunlight across large regions. Even distant populations experienced the aftermath of whatever had exploded above the Siberian forest. Today, the Tunguska event remains one of the most studied natural mysteries of the modern era. Researchers continue analysing evidence, refining models, and searching for new clues. The basic outline of the story may be understood, yet important details remain uncertain. Exactly what entered Earth's atmosphere that morning? How large was it? And could a similar event happen again? Those questions continue to inspire investigation more than a century later. Above a remote Siberian forest, something exploded with extraordinary force. It flattened millions of trees, shook the earth, and created one of the greatest scientific mysteries of the 20th century. A mystery that still echoes across the wilderness of Tunguska today. The mystery of the princes in the tower. Few mysteries in British history have inspired more debate than the disappearance of two young princes more than 500 years ago. It is a story filled with power, ambition, and unanswered questions. A tale involving a royal family divided by conflict, a kingdom uncertain about its future, and two boys who entered one of England's most famous fortresses and were never seen again. For centuries, historians have searched for answers. Who was responsible? What really happened inside the Tower of London? And why does the mystery continue to haunt history after so many generations? This is the story of the princes in the tower, and it remains one of the most enduring unsolved mysteries of the medieval world. The story begins in 1483. England was emerging from a long period of political turmoil known as the Wars of the Roses. Power shifted repeatedly between rival branches of the royal family. Loyalty could change quickly, and the throne itself was often contested. When King Edward IV died unexpectedly, the future of the kingdom suddenly became uncertain. His eldest son, 12-year-old Edward, was expected to become King Edward V. The young prince was the rightful heir, yet he was still a child, and powerful figures within the kingdom immediately began competing for influence. Among them was Edward's uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. Richard was appointed Lord Protector until the young king could assume full authority. At first, this arrangement appeared temporary, but events soon took a dramatic turn. Edward was escorted toward London to prepare for his coronation. Along the way, Richard took control of the situation and assumed responsibility for the young prince. Soon afterward, Edward's younger brother, Richard, Duke of York, joined him. The two boys were placed inside the Tower of London. At the time, this was not necessarily unusual. The tower often served as a royal residence before coronations. Yet what happened next transformed an ordinary political transition into one of history's greatest mysteries. Weeks passed. The princes were occasionally seen within the tower grounds. Observers reported glimpsing them through windows or walking in courtyards. Then the sightings became less frequent. Eventually they stopped altogether. The boys simply vanished. Meanwhile, Richard claimed that his nephews were illegitimate and therefore had no rightful claim to the throne. Parliament accepted the argument. Richard was crowned King Richard III. The princes never emerged. Their disappearance immediately raised suspicions. Many people believed the boys had been murdered. Yet no clear evidence appeared. No official explanation was given, and no bodies were publicly produced. Rumours spread throughout England. Stories circulated across Europe, but certainty remained elusive. The mystery only deepened with time. One of the central questions has always been whether Richard III ordered the deaths of his nephews. Many historians consider him the most likely suspect. The princes represented a threat to his claim to the throne. As long as they remained alive, supporters could attempt to restore them to power. Removing them would eliminate that danger, yet despite centuries of investigation, no definitive proof has ever emerged. Other suspects have also been proposed. Some historians point toward powerful nobles who may have acted independently. Others have suggested that later rulers had reasons to conceal the truth. One theory even argues that at least one prince survived. Over the years, several individuals claim to be one of the missing boys. Most historians remain skeptical, but the claims demonstrate how uncertain the situation remained. The mystery took another intriguing turn in 1674. Workers renovating part of the Tower of London discovered a wooden chest beneath a staircase. Inside were the skeletal remains of 2 children. Many immediately wondered whether the bones belonged to the missing princes. The remains were eventually placed in Westminster Abbey. Yet even this discovery failed to settle the debate. Centuries later, scientists still cannot say with complete certainty who the children were. The evidence remains inconclusive. What makes the mystery so compelling is the lack of clear answers. Most historical crimes eventually leave enough evidence for a likely explanation. The princes in the tower remain different. Important documents are missing, witness accounts are limited, and much of what happened inside the tower during those crucial months remains unknown. Every generation revisits the evidence. Every generation reaches new conclusions, yet no theory has gained universal acceptance. Perhaps that uncertainty explains why the story continues to fascinate people around the world. At its heart, the mystery is not only about politics. It is about 2 children caught in a struggle for power beyond their control. 2 boys whose fate became entangled with the future of a kingdom, and 2 lives that disappeared into history without a clear explanation. Today, the Tower of London remains one of Britain's most visited landmarks. Millions walk through its gates each year. Many come seeking traces of the princes, looking toward the ancient walls where the boys were last seen, wondering what happened within those stone chambers so many centuries ago. Inside England's most famous fortress, 2 young princes vanished without a trace. Their disappearance changed the course of history. Their fate remains unknown, and their mystery continues to endure as one of the greatest unsolved cases of the medieval world, the mysterious green children of Woolpit. In a quiet village in eastern England, a strange story has survived for more than 800 years. It is a tale so unusual that historians still debate it today. A story involving 2 children who appeared without warning, children who spoke an unknown language, who claimed to come from a land no one had ever heard of, and most remarkably of all, whose skin was said to be green. At first glance, the story sounds like a fairy tale, the kind of legend passed down through generations around a village fireplace. Yet the account appears in medieval historical records written by respected chroniclers. People living at the time believed something extraordinary had happened. And centuries later, the mystery continues to fascinate historians, folklorists, and curious readers around the world. This is the story of the Green Children of Woolpit, and it remains one of the strangest mysteries in English history. The story takes place during the 12th century in the village of Woolpit, located in the county of Suffolk. At the time, England looked very different from the country we know today. Most people lived in small rural communities. Travel was slow. The outside world often felt distant and unknown. Villagers rarely journeyed far from home. News travelled gradually, and strange events could quickly become the subject of speculation and wonder. According to the historical accounts, local villagers discovered 2 children near a series of pits used for trapping wolves. These pits gave Woolpit its name. The children appeared frightened and confused. Their clothing was unfamiliar, their language was completely unknown to those who found them, and most unusual of all, their skin reportedly possessed a greenish colour. The villagers had never seen anything like them. The children were brought into the community and cared for by local residents. At first, they refused nearly all food that was offered. Bread, meat, and other common foods were rejected. According to the story, they survived only after discovering beans growing in a garden. They eagerly ate the beans and continued doing so for some time. Gradually, they began accepting other foods. As their diet changed, the green colour of their skins supposedly faded. Over time, the children adapted to life in England, yet many questions remained. Who were they? Where had they come from? And how had they arrived in Woolpit? The mystery deepened when the children eventually learned enough English to explain their origins. According to the accounts, they claimed to come from a place called St. Martin's Land. It was described as a strange country where the sun never shone brightly. Everything existed in a perpetual twilight. The people there were said to have green skin like their own. The children claimed they had been tending livestock when they heard a loud noise. After following the sound, they suddenly found themselves in an unfamiliar world. The explanation puzzled everyone who heard it. No such place was known to exist, and the description seemed more like something from folklore than reality. One of the children, a boy, reportedly died not long after arriving in England. His sister survived. As she grew older, she adapted to local life, learned the language, and eventually became part of English society. According to later accounts, she even married and lived a relatively normal life. Yet the mystery of her origins was never fully explained. For centuries, scholars have attempted to understand what really happened. Some researchers believe the story may have a historical explanation. One theory suggests the children were refugees from a nearby immigrant community. During the medieval period, groups of Flemish settlers lived in parts of eastern England. Conflict and violence occasionally displaced these communities. If the children became separated from their families, their unfamiliar language and appearance might have seemed strange to local villagers. The reported green skin could potentially be explained by malnutrition or illness. Another theory focuses on folklore. Medieval Europe was filled with stories about hidden worlds, underground realms, and mysterious beings living beyond ordinary human experience. Some historians believe the tale may have evolved over time, blending real events with local legends. The result could be a story that combines history and imagination in equal measure. Others have proposed even more unusual explanations. Over the centuries, the Green Children have been linked to lost civilizations, hidden dimensions, and countless other theories. While such ideas remain speculative, they demonstrate the enduring fascination surrounding the mystery. The story continues to inspire curiosity, because it resists easy explanation. Unlike many historical mysteries, there is no single answer accepted by everyone. The original accounts survive, the village still exists, yet the truth remains elusive. Perhaps that uncertainty is why the story has endured for so long. The Green Children of Woolpit occupy a unique place between history and legend. They appear in written records, yet their story feels almost dreamlike, real enough to be documented, strange enough to be unforgettable. Today, visitors to Woolpit can still encounter reminders of the mystery. The village has embraced its unusual connection to one of England's most famous legends. Generations have passed since the children supposedly appeared near the wolf pits, yet their story continues to capture imaginations. In a small English village, two mysterious children emerge from nowhere. They spoke an unknown language, claimed to come from a hidden land, and brought with them one of the most enduring mysteries in medieval history. A mystery that remains unsolved to this day. The mystery of Lake Vostok. Beneath nearly 2.5 miles of Antarctic ice lies one of the most isolated places on Earth. No sunlight has touched it for millions of years. No human being has ever seen it directly. And for most of modern history, nobody even knew it existed. Hidden beneath the frozen wilderness of Antarctica is an enormous lake, a body of water larger than many countries, a lake sealed beneath ice long before humans built cities, wrote books, or recorded history. Its existence sounds almost impossible, yet it is real, and the mysteries surrounding it continue to fascinate scientists around the world. This remarkable place is known as Lake Vostok, and it remains one of the most extraordinary hidden environments ever discovered on Earth. The story begins in one of the coldest places on the planet. Antarctica is often imagined as a frozen desert, a landscape of endless ice stretching toward every horizon. Temperatures can fall far below anything experienced in most parts of the world. Powerful winds sweep across the continent, and survival is incredibly difficult. At the centre of this frozen world stands Russia's Vostok Station. It was here that researchers unknowingly found themselves above one of the greatest scientific discoveries of the 20th century. For many years, scientists assumed the ice sheet beneath them rested directly on solid ground. Then evidence began to suggest something unusual. Radar surveys revealed a vast, flat region hidden deep beneath the ice. The data indicated liquid water, not a small pocket, not a temporary melt zone, but an enormous lake stretching for hundreds of miles beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. The discovery surprised researchers. Lake Vostok is immense. It measures roughly 150 miles in length and contains an extraordinary amount of fresh water. Yet what truly captured scientific attention was its isolation. The lake appears to have been sealed beneath ice for millions of years, long before modern humans existed, long before the rise of civilization, possibly even before some ancient animal species evolved. The realization sparked immediate questions. What might exist within such an isolated environment? Could microscopic life survive there? Had unique organisms evolved independently beneath the ice? Or was the lake completely sterile? Scientists had never encountered anything quite like it. The challenge, however, was enormous. Reaching the lake would require drilling through thousands of meters of ice. Researchers had to proceed carefully. Contaminating the water with modern microbes could destroy one of the most pristine environments on Earth. For years, international scientific teams debated how best to explore the hidden lake without damaging it. The effort became one of the most ambitious scientific projects in Antarctica. Part of the fascination comes from the lake's extraordinary conditions. The water exists beneath immense pressure, created by the ice above. Temperatures remain near freezing, and complete darkness has persisted for countless generations. If life exists there, it must survive under conditions unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. Some scientists believe studying Lake Vostok could help us understand how life might survive in extreme environments elsewhere in the solar system. Moons such as Europa and Enceladus are thought to contain oceans beneath thick layers of ice. Lake Vostok may offer a glimpse into what such hidden worlds could be like. Over the years, drilling projects gradually approached the lake. The closer researchers came, the greater the excitement became. Samples recovered from deep ice layers contained clues about ancient climates and environmental conditions. The ice itself preserved a record stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. Each layer offered another chapter in Earth's history. Then came one of the biggest questions of all. Would the lake contain life? Some studies suggested the possible presence of microbial organisms. Others argued that contamination from drilling equipment complicated the results. The debate continues today. Researchers remain cautious. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. For now, many mysteries remain unresolved, and perhaps that uncertainty is what makes Lake Vostok so fascinating. Unlike many places explored by science, this hidden world remains largely unknown. The lake exists. We know its size, we know its location. Yet much of what lies beneath the ice remains hidden from view. It is a reminder that even on our own planet, unexplored frontiers still exist. Places where questions outnumber answers. Places where discovery remains possible. Far beneath the frozen surface of Antarctica lies a vast lake untouched by sunlight for millions of years. A hidden world sealed beneath ice. A place of extraordinary scientific mystery and one of the most remarkable unexplored environments on Earth. Strange phenomena above the pyramids. Few places on Earth have inspired more mystery than the pyramids of Egypt. For thousands of years, they have dominated the landscape west of the Nile. Their enormous stone blocks, their precise construction, and their incredible age have made them symbols of both human achievement and enduring curiosity. Yet the mysteries surrounding the pyramids are not limited to the distant past. Even in modern times, strange stories continue to emerge from the deserts around Giza. Stories of unusual lights in the sky, mysterious objects captured on camera, and sightings that have fueled decades of speculation. Some explanations are ordinary, others remain uncertain, but together they reveal something fascinating about humanity's relationship with one of the world's most famous archaeological sites. The Giza Plateau sits on the edge of Cairo, where the modern city meets the desert. Millions of visitors travel here every year. Tourists photograph the pyramids from every angle. Researchers continue studying the monuments, and locals witness the landscape on a daily basis. With so many eyes focused on the site, unusual sightings inevitably attract attention. One of the most common reports involves strange lights appearing above the pyramids. For decades, visitors have described seeing bright objects moving across the night sky. Some reports involve stationary lights hovering in the distance. Others describe fast-moving objects changing direction unexpectedly. Photographs and videos occasionally appear online, often generating intense discussion. Almost immediately, theories begin to emerge. Some observers point to aircraft. Others suggest satellites or atmospheric effects. A few argue that the objects cannot be explained so easily. The problem is that unusual lights in the sky are often difficult to identify. Distance can be deceptive, perspective can distort movement, and modern cameras sometimes produce visual effects that appear far stranger than reality. What seems mysterious in a photograph may have a perfectly ordinary explanation, yet not every report is dismissed so easily. Over the years, several videos recorded near the pyramids have attracted international attention. In some cases, objects appear to move silently above the monuments. The footage spreads rapidly online. Viewers analyze every frame. Experts offer competing interpretations, and debates continue long after the original event. One reason these stories become so popular is the location itself. Had the same object appeared above an ordinary city skyline, far fewer people might notice. But when something unusual is seen above the pyramids, the setting immediately adds an extra layer of intrigue. The monuments already carry an aura of mystery. Anything connected to them tends to attract attention. The fascination is not new. Long before cameras existed, travellers visiting Egypt often described strange experiences in the desert. Ancient monuments have always inspired stories. Massive structures standing for thousands of years naturally encourage speculation. People wonder about the civilization that built them. They imagine forgotten knowledge. They search for hidden meanings, and sometimes those questions extend beyond archaeology itself. By the 20th century, interest in unidentified flying objects had become a global phenomenon. Reports emerged from countless countries. Egypt was no exception. Whenever unusual sightings occurred near famous landmarks, they often received widespread publicity. The pyramids became one of several locations frequently associated with such stories. Yet despite decades of claims, no evidence has ever demonstrated a direct connection between the pyramids and unexplained aerial phenomena. Most sightings remain exactly that. Sightings. Interesting observations without definitive conclusions. This has not stopped speculation from flourishing. Books, documentaries, and television programs have explored the subject extensively. Some propose connections between ancient monuments and advanced knowledge. Others suggest entirely different possibilities. Theories multiply because certainty remains elusive, and uncertainty has always been fertile ground for mystery. What makes the phenomenon particularly interesting is not necessarily the sightings themselves. It is the way people respond to them. The pyramids occupy a unique place in the human imagination. They are among the oldest surviving monuments on Earth. They represent a civilization that continues to fascinate millions. As a result, any unusual event associated with them quickly captures public attention. The mystery often reveals as much about us as it does about the objects being observed. We are naturally drawn to unanswered questions, especially when they occur in places already surrounded by wonder. Today, researchers continue studying the pyramids through archaeology, engineering, and historical investigation. New discoveries are still being made, hidden chambers are explored, ancient construction methods are debated, and fresh evidence occasionally changes our understanding of the past. Meanwhile, stories of strange lights and unusual sightings continue to circulate. Most will likely find ordinary explanations. Some may never be fully resolved, but the fascination endures. Above the deserts of Giza, the pyramids continue watching over the landscape just as they have for thousands of years. Monuments surrounded by history, places where fact and mystery often meet, and perhaps the perfect setting for stories that refuse to disappear. The mystery of Lake Baikal's humanoid divers. Deep within Siberia lies a lake unlike any other on Earth. It is the deepest lake in the world, the oldest lake in the world, and one of the most mysterious. Its waters plunge more than a mile beneath the surface. Its depths contain countless species found nowhere else, and even today, large portions of the lake remain poorly understood. This remarkable place is known as Lake Baikal. For centuries, local legends have surrounded its dark waters. Stories of strange creatures, unexplained disappearances, and unusual sightings beneath the surface. Most can be dismissed as folklore. Yet one story, emerging from the Soviet era, continues to fascinate mystery enthusiasts around the world. A story involving military divers, a secret training mission, and reports of mysterious humanoid figures deep beneath the lake. Whether fact, misunderstanding, or legend, it remains one of the strangest tales ever associated with Lake Baikal. The story is said to have taken place during the early 1980s. At the time, Soviet military divers regularly trained in various bodies of water throughout the Soviet Union. According to accounts that later surfaced after the collapse of the USSR, a group of divers was conducting exercises in Lake Baikal when something unexpected occurred. While descending through the cold waters, they reportedly encountered unusual figures beneath the surface. The description was extraordinary. Witnesses allegedly reported seeing humanoid beings moving through the water. The figures were said to be much larger than ordinary humans. Some accounts claimed they stood nearly 10 feet tall. Others described them as wearing tight-fitting suits that appeared unlike standard diving equipment. Most curious of all, the beings reportedly lacked visible breathing apparatus. The divers were stunned. Nothing in their training had prepared them for such an encounter. The figures allegedly moved calmly through the water before disappearing into the depths. If the story ended there, it might simply be remembered as an unusual sighting. But according to later retellings, military commanders decided to investigate further. A team of divers was supposedly ordered to approach and capture one of the mysterious beings. What happened next forms the most dramatic part of the story. As the divers attempted their mission, an unknown force allegedly propelled them rapidly toward the surface. The sudden ascent created severe pressure-related injuries. Several divers reportedly suffered serious consequences. The mission ended abruptly, and the mysterious figures were never seen again. It is a remarkable story. Perhaps too remarkable. One reason the tale remains controversial is the lack of reliable documentation. The account became widely known only years later through books, interviews and reports discussing unusual Soviet-era incidents. No publicly available evidence has confirmed the event. No photographs exist. No official records have been released verifying the encounter. As a result, historians and researchers remain skeptical. Many consider the story little more than a modern legend. Yet that has not stopped it from spreading. Part of the appeal lies in the setting itself. Lake Baikal already possesses an almost mythical reputation. Containing roughly 1/5 of the world's unfrozen freshwater, it is a place of extraordinary natural wonders. The lake's immense depth and isolation have inspired countless stories over the centuries. Standing on its shores, it is easy to understand why people imagine mysteries hidden beneath the surface. The water often appears dark and endless. The depths seem unknowable. Even modern technology has explored only a fraction of what lies below. Scientists studying Lake Baikal have made many genuine discoveries. The lake contains unique ecosystems found nowhere else on Earth. Some species evolved in complete isolation. Others adapted to conditions unlike those found in any other freshwater environment. Each new discovery reveals how unusual the lake truly is. But none have included giant underwater humanoids. Researchers generally view the diver story with caution. Several explanations have been proposed. Misidentification is one possibility. Poor visibility underwater can create surprising illusions. Light behaves differently beneath the surface. Distance becomes difficult to judge. Objects may appear larger or stranger than they actually are. Human perception is not always reliable in extreme environments. Others suggest the story may have evolved over time. A simple training accident could have become embellished through repeated retellings. Details may have been added, events may have been exaggerated, and gradually a legend emerged. This process is common throughout history. Stories grow as they pass from one person to another. Yet despite these reasonable explanations, the mystery continues to attract attention. The image is simply too compelling. A group of military divers descending into the deepest lake on Earth and encountering something impossible. It feels like the plot of a science fiction novel, and perhaps that is why the story refuses to disappear. Whether true or not, it taps into a universal fascination with the unknown. The idea that hidden worlds might still exist beneath the surface of our planet. Today, Lake Baikal remains one of Earth's greatest natural wonders. Scientists continue exploring its depths. Researchers continue uncovering new discoveries, and visitors continue arriving from around the world to experience its beauty. Yet somewhere within the countless stories surrounding the lake, the tale of the mysterious humanoid divers endures, a story of unexplained encounters, hidden depths, and one of the strangest mysteries ever linked to the waters of Lake Baikal, the legend of the Thunderbird. Long before airplanes crossed the skies and satellites orbited the Earth, people looked upward and saw mysteries they could not explain. Storms appeared without warning. Thunder echoed across mountains and plains. Lightning split the darkness, and powerful winds swept across the landscape with incredible force. To many indigenous peoples of North America, these natural events were not random. They were connected to a powerful being that lived beyond the reach of ordinary humans, a creature so enormous that the beating of its wings could create thunder, a being capable of hurling lightning from the sky, a guardian, a force of nature, and one of the most important figures in Native American tradition. This legendary creature became known as the Thunderbird, and its story has endured for countless generations. The Thunderbird appears in the traditions of many indigenous cultures across North America. Although the details vary from region to region, certain themes remain remarkably consistent. The creature is usually described as a gigantic bird possessing immense power. Its wings are said to create thunder as they move through the air. Lightning often accompanies its presence, and storms frequently follow in its wake. Far from being a simple mythological animal, the Thunderbird occupied an important place within the spiritual beliefs of many communities. Among the peoples of the Pacific Northwest, the Great Plains, and regions surrounding the Great Lakes, stories of the Thunderbird served many purposes. Some traditions portrayed it as a protector. Others viewed it as a powerful supernatural force maintaining balance within the natural world. In many accounts, the Thunderbird was engaged in an eternal struggle against dangerous creatures associated with water, chaos, or destruction. The stories helped explain natural events while also conveying cultural values and spiritual teachings. One reason the Thunderbird became so widespread may be its connection to dramatic weather. Thunderstorms can be both beautiful and terrifying. A clear sky can transform within minutes. Dark clouds gather. Thunder rolls across the landscape. Lightning illuminates the horizon. For communities living close to nature, such events possessed immense significance. The Thunderbird provided a way of understanding and describing these powerful forces. The creature became woven into stories passed down through generations. Many indigenous artists incorporated Thunderbird imagery into carvings, masks, clothing, and ceremonial objects. The figure often appears with outstretched wings, a powerful beak, and striking visual designs that emphasize strength and authority. These representations remain important cultural symbols today. They connect modern communities with traditions that stretch deep into the past. Yet the story of the Thunderbird extends beyond traditional folklore. Over the years, unusual reports occasionally emerge from settlers, explorers, and travelers who claim to have witnessed enormous birds. Some accounts described creatures far larger than any known species. Others spoke of giant winged forms appearing briefly before disappearing into the distance. Most of these reports lack evidence and are generally viewed with skepticism. Nevertheless, they contributed to the enduring fascination surrounding the legend. Part of the mystery comes from the existence of truly impressive birds in North America. Eagles, condors, and other large species can possess enormous wingspans. When viewed from a distance or under unusual conditions, their size may appear even greater. Human perception is not always reliable, especially when observing something unexpected. A large bird silhouetted against the sky can easily seem larger than reality. Throughout history, such sightings have often inspired stories and speculation. Another reason the Thunderbird remains compelling is that it exists at the boundary between myth and nature. The creature is clearly legendary, yet it is rooted in real experiences. Thunderstorms are real. Lightning is real. The awe inspired by powerful weather is real. The Thunderbird transformed those experiences into a memorable and meaningful story. It gave form to forces that seemed larger than human understanding. Even today, the image retains its power. Across North America, Thunderbird imagery continues to appear in art, cultural, traditions, and community symbols. The legend remains an important part of indigenous heritage. Its significance extends far beyond mystery or entertainment. The Thunderbird represents a connection between people, nature, and the stories used to understand the world. Perhaps that is why the legend has survived for so long. Not because people believed a giant bird literally created every storm, but because the story captured something true about human experience, the feeling of standing beneath a darkening sky. hearing distant thunder, and sensing the immense power of nature unfolding overhead. Across mountains, forests, lakes, and plains, stories of a great bird have echoed for generations, a guardian of the skies, a bringer of storms, and one of the most enduring legends in the history of North America. The Thunderbird remains a symbol of mystery, power, and wonder that continues to soar through the imagination today. Nikola Tesla and the hidden inventions. Few inventors have inspired as much fascination as Nikola Tesla. To some, he was a brilliant engineer decades ahead of his time. To others, he was a misunderstood genius whose greatest discoveries were hidden from the world. More than 80 years after his death, stories about Tesla continue to circulate. Stories of secret technologies, lost inventions, and mysterious papers that were supposedly confiscated before anyone could fully understand what they contained. The truth is far more complicated, but perhaps even more fascinating, because the mystery of Tesla's final papers remains one of the most enduring legends in the history of science. Nikola Tesla spent much of his life imagining technologies that seemed impossible. Born in 1856, he became one of the most important inventors of the modern age. His work on alternating current electricity helped transform the world. Many of the systems that power modern cities can trace their origins to ideas Tesla helped develop. Yet despite his achievements, Tesla's later years were very different from his early successes. As he grew older, many of his ambitious projects struggled to attract funding. Some remained unfinished. Others existed only as concepts and sketches. Tesla continued developing ideas until the end of his life, often working alone, often making claims that captured public attention. By the 1930s and early 1940s, he was living quietly in a New York hotel. The inventor who had once amazed audiences with demonstrations of electricity had become a largely isolated figure. Yet he still spoke about remarkable inventions. Among them was something he called a teleforce device. Newspapers often referred to it as a death ray. Tesla claimed the technology could potentially defend nations by destroying aircraft at great distances. Whether such a device was truly practical remains uncertain, but the idea generated enormous interest. Then, in January 1943, Tesla died alone in his hotel room. He was 86 years old. Almost immediately, attention turned toward his belongings. The world was in the middle of the Second World War. Military technology was advancing rapidly, and governments were understandably interested in the work of a famous inventor who had discussed powerful new weapons. Officials examined Tesla's papers, notes, and personal documents. This event would later become the foundation for countless mysteries. Stories quickly emerged suggesting that revolutionary inventions had been discovered among Tesla's possessions. Others claimed important documents had disappeared. Some believed governments had secretly hidden advanced technologies from the public. The reality appears less dramatic. Historical records show that Tesla's papers were reviewed by experts. Among them was engineer John G. Trump, an electrical specialist who later became well known in his own right. After examining the materials, he reportedly concluded that many of Tesla's later ideas were theoretical and did not contain practical breakthroughs capable of changing the course of the war. Yet that conclusion did little to stop speculation. In fact, it may have fueled it. Many people wondered whether everything had truly been revealed. The mystery deepened because Tesla's reputation had already grown beyond that of an ordinary inventor. He was associated with bold visions: wireless power transmission, global communication networks, advanced energy systems, ideas that often sounded futuristic, even decades after his death. As a result, many found it easy to believe that undiscovered inventions might still exist within his notes. Over the years, theories multiplied. Some claimed Tesla had discovered limitless energy. Others suggested he developed advanced weapons. A few proposed even more extraordinary possibilities. Most of these ideas lack evidence, yet they continue to attract attention because they are attached to a real historical figure whose genuine accomplishments were already remarkable. One reason the story endures is that Tesla himself often spoke about ambitious concepts that were never fully realized. His imagination frequently extended beyond the technological capabilities of his era. Some projects remained unfinished. Others survived only as sketches and descriptions. This created gaps in the historical record, and wherever gaps exist, mystery tends to grow. Today, many, of Tesla's surviving papers are preserved in archives and museums. Researchers continue studying them. Historians continue examining his work. The inventor's legacy remains secure without the need for hidden secrets or lost technologies. Yet the fascination persists. Perhaps because people are naturally drawn to the possibility that somewhere, among forgotten notes and aging documents, there might still be an idea waiting to be rediscovered. An idea ahead of its time, an invention never completed, or a glimpse into the imagination of one of history's most extraordinary inventors. When Nikola Tesla died in a New York hotel room, he left behind more than papers and patents. He left behind questions about unfinished ideas, lost possibilities, and a mystery that continues to captivate the world more than 8 decades later. The tiny coffins at Arthur's Seat. In 1836, a group of boys exploring the rocky slopes of a hill in Edinburgh made a discovery that would become one of Scotland's strangest mysteries. At first, it seemed insignificant. A small hidden cave tucked among the rocks, the kind of place children might investigate out of curiosity. But inside they found something unexpected. Tiny wooden coffins, carefully crafted, neatly arranged, and each containing a small human-like figure. The discovery immediately raised questions. Who had placed them there? Why were they hidden? And what purpose could such unusual objects possibly serve? Nearly 2 centuries later, nobody knows for certain. The mystery remains unsolved, and the tiny coffins of Arthur's Seat continue to fascinate historians, archaeologists, and mystery enthusiasts alike. Arthur's Seat is one of the most recognisable landmarks in Scotland. Rising above the city of Edinburgh, the ancient volcanic hill dominates the surrounding landscape. Today, thousands of people climb its slopes every year. The views are spectacular. The paths are well known. Yet hidden among its rocky outcrops are places that few visitors ever notice. It was in one of these secluded areas that the strange discovery occurred. According to contemporary reports, the boys found 17 miniature coffins concealed within a small cavity in the rocks. The coffins were arranged in rows. Each measured only a few inches in length. Inside every coffin lay a tiny carved figure dressed in simple clothing. Someone had clearly devoted considerable time and effort to creating them. They were not toys hastily discarded, nor did they appear to be ordinary decorations. Their purpose was something else entirely. The discovery quickly attracted public attention. Newspapers reported the story, curious visitors examined the objects, and speculation began almost immediately. One of the first mysteries involved the number itself. Why 17 coffins? The choice seemed deliberate, yet nobody could explain its significance. The figures were not labelled, no written message accompanied them, no obvious clues revealed who had created them. Researchers were left with only the objects themselves. Over the years, many theories emerged. Some believed the coffins were connected to witchcraft or folk magic. 19th century Scotland still retained many traditional beliefs and superstitions. Hidden objects were sometimes associated with rituals intended to protect, curse, or influence events. The secretive placement of the coffins seemed consistent with that possibility, yet no direct evidence supported the idea. Others suggested the coffins may have served as memorials. Perhaps they represented individuals who died without proper burial. In an era when death was a common part of life, symbolic remembrance held great importance. The tiny figures might have been created to honour people whose graves were unknown or inaccessible. Again, however, certainty remained elusive. The most famous theory emerged much later. Some researchers noticed an intriguing coincidence involving one of Scotland's most notorious crimes. In the 1820s, Edinburgh was shocked by the murders committed by William Burke and William Hare. The pair killed numerous victims and sold the bodies for anatomical study. 17 victims were eventually linked to their crimes, the same number as the miniature coffins. Could the coffins have been secret memorials created for those victims? The theory captured public imagination. It offered a possible explanation for the mysterious number. Yet historians remain divided. No evidence directly connects the coffins to Burke and Hare. The timing is plausible, but proof remains absent. As with so many historical mysteries, the evidence allows for possibilities rather than conclusions. One of the most fascinating aspects of the discovery is the craftsmanship itself. The coffins were carefully made. The clothing worn by the figures was detailed. The arrangement appeared intentional. Whoever created them was committed to the project. This was not a casual act. It required patience, effort, and purpose. The challenge is that the purpose was never recorded. The creator left no explanation behind. In many ways, the tiny coffins represent the perfect historical mystery. The objects are real. They can be examined. They exist in museums today, yet their meaning remains hidden. Unlike myths or legends, the mystery is tangible. Researchers can study the coffins directly, and still, the central question remains unanswered. Who made them, and why? Perhaps that uncertainty explains why the story continues to endure. The coffins seem to exist between ordinary history and something stranger. They are small enough to fit in a person's hand, yet mysterious enough to inspire generations of speculation. A hidden message from the past that nobody has fully deciphered. High above the city of Edinburgh, 17 tiny coffins were hidden among the rocks of an ancient hill. Their creator remains unknown, their purpose remains uncertain, and their mystery continues to stand as one of the most puzzling discoveries in Scottish history. The Beast of Gévaudan. In the mountains of southern France, a terrifying mystery unfolded during the 18th century. It began with reports of a strange creature roaming the countryside. At first, many people assumed it was simply a wolf. Wolves were common in rural France at the time. They were feared, but familiar. Yet as the attacks continued, witnesses began describing something far more unusual. The animal appeared larger than an ordinary wolf. Its behaviour seemed different. Its attacks were unusually bold, and according to many accounts, it seemed almost impossible to stop. Fear spread throughout the region. Rumours multiplied, and before long, the creature became known simply as the Beast of Gévaudan. More than 250 years later, its true identity remains one of Europe's most famous unsolved mysteries. The story began in 1764 in the province of Gévaudan, a rugged region of forests, hills, and isolated villages in what is now southern France. Life in the countryside could be difficult. Many communities were small and remote. Travel was slow. Communication was limited. News often spread by word of mouth. When reports emerged of a dangerous animal attacking local residents, concern quickly grew. The first victims were often tending livestock or travelling alone through rural areas. Witnesses described a powerful creature with reddish fur, an unusually large head, and a long tail. Some claimed it possessed markings unlike those of any wolf they had ever seen. Others emphasized its size. Descriptions varied, but nearly everyone agreed on one thing: the animal seemed different. As the attacks increased, panic spread throughout the region. Villagers became afraid to leave their homes alone. Parents worried about children working in fields. Farmers travelled in groups whenever possible. The beast became a constant topic of conversation. Every new sighting added to its growing legend. Local authorities organised hunting parties. Experienced hunters searched forests and valleys. Soldiers were even brought into the region to assist. Yet despite repeated efforts, the attacks continued. The inability to stop the creature only increased public fear. People began wondering whether the beast was something more than an ordinary predator. Some believed it might be a gigantic wolf. Others suggested an exotic animal escaped from captivity. A few imagined something far stranger. Stories spread rapidly, and with each retelling, the mystery grew. One reason the case attracted so much attention was the number of reported attacks. Accounts from the period suggest dozens of people were killed over several years. Newspapers covered the story extensively. Even the French royal court became aware of the situation. King Louis XV eventually ordered additional efforts to eliminate the beast. Few animal attacks in European history received such widespread attention. The mystery had become a national concern. Among the many hunting expeditions, several wolves were killed and examined. On multiple occasions, hunters believed they had finally ended the threat. Yet reports continued. The attacks seemed to return again and again. This led some people to conclude that more than one animal may have been involved. Others argued that witnesses were describing different creatures entirely. The confusion made it difficult to separate fact from rumour. The most famous chapter of the story occurred in 1767. According to historical accounts, a local hunter named Jean Chastel shot and killed a large animal believed by many to be the beast. Descriptions of the creature varied. Some observers thought it resembled an unusually large wolf. Others claimed it possessed strange features not commonly seen in local wildlife. What is known is that reports of attacks largely ceased afterward. For many people, the mystery appeared solved. Yet questions remained. What exactly had Chastel killed? Was it truly responsible for all the attacks? Or had fear and rumour transformed an ordinary predator into something legendary? Historians continue debating those questions today. Modern researchers generally believe wolves likely played a major role in the events. France at the time contained far larger wolf populations than today. Attacks, though rare, did occur. Some experts suggest multiple animals may have been responsible. Others believe exaggerated reports and widespread fear contributed to the legend. Yet no single explanation satisfies everyone. Part of the reason the story endures is that it exists somewhere between history and folklore. Unlike many legends, the Beast of Gévaudan is well documented. Official records survive, newspaper accounts survive, witness statements survive. The events clearly happened. What remains uncertain is how much of the story reflects reality and how much reflects fear, rumour, and imagination. Today, the Beast of Gévaudan remains one of France's most famous historical mysteries. Books, documentaries, and films continue exploring the case. Researchers still examine old records searching for clues, and visitors travel to the region hoping to learn more about the legend. In the forests and mountains of 18th century France, something inspired fear on a remarkable scale. Whether wolves, or something else entirely, the creature left behind a mystery that has survived for centuries, a mystery known simply as the Beast of Gévaudan, the Roswell debris mystery. In the summer of 1947, something fell from the sky in the deserts of New Mexico. At first, it seemed like a minor local story. A rancher discovered unusual debris scattered across a remote area. Military personnel arrived. The material was collected. And for a brief moment, the incident appeared destined to fade into history. Instead, it became one of the most famous mysteries of the 20th century, a mystery involving strange debris, conflicting official statements, and decades of speculation about what really happened in the desert near Roswell. More than 70 years later, the event continues to inspire debate around the world. This is the story of the Roswell debris mystery, and it remains one of the most enduring puzzles in modern history. The story began in July 1947 on a ranch northwest of the town of Roswell, New Mexico. The region was sparsely populated. Wide open plains stretched across the landscape. Military facilities operated nearby, including some connected to America's rapidly expanding aviation programs. It was an era shaped by technological change. The Second World War had recently ended. The Cold War was beginning, and reports of unusual objects in the sky were attracting growing public attention. Against this backdrop, rancher William Brazel discovered debris scattered across part of his property. According to later accounts, the material appeared unusual. There were thin metallic fragments, pieces of lightweight material, and debris unlike anything he recognized. Curious about the discovery, Brazel eventually reported it to local authorities. The military quickly became involved. What happened next transformed an ordinary recovery operation into a lasting mystery. Personnel from nearby Roswell Army Airfield examined the debris. Then came a surprising announcement. A military press release stated that personnel had recovered a flying disc. The statement attracted immediate national attention. Newspapers quickly picked up the story. For a brief period, it appeared that something extraordinary had been found. Then, almost as quickly, the story changed. Military officials issued a new explanation. The recovered object, they said, was not a flying disc at all. Instead, it was identified as a weather balloon. Photographs were released showing officers posing with balloon debris. The official correction appeared straightforward. Many newspapers lost interest. The story faded from public attention. For several decades, Roswell remained little more than a historical curiosity. Then, during the 1970s, interest returned. Researchers began re-examining the incident. Witnesses were interviewed, old records were studied, and questions emerged regarding the conflicting statements issued in 1947. Why had the military initially described the object as a flying disc? Why had the explanation changed so quickly? And what exactly had been recovered from the ranch? These questions helped transform Roswell into a global phenomenon. Over time, numerous theories emerged. Some argued that the original explanation had been correct and that an extraterrestrial craft had crashed in the desert. Others suggested that the government had concealed important information. Books, documentaries, and television programs explored increasingly elaborate possibilities. Roswell became closely linked with modern UFO culture, yet historians and researchers continued searching for evidence. In the 1990s, the United States government released additional information regarding the incident. According to official reports, the debris was connected not to a weather balloon, but to a classified military project known as Project Mogul. The program used high-altitude balloons to monitor possible Soviet nuclear tests. Because the project was secret, military officials in 1947 could not openly discuss its purpose. Supporters of this explanation argue that it accounts for many aspects of the mystery: the unusual materials, the military involvement, and the changing public statements. Yet not everyone was convinced. Some researchers continued questioning aspects of the official account. The debate persists to this day. One reason the mystery endures is the famous photographs associated with the incident. Images released after the military's revised explanation showed officers displaying pieces of balloon material. For some observers, the photographs settled the matter. For others, they raised additional questions. Every detail has been analysed repeatedly. Every image has been scrutinised, and every statement has been examined from multiple perspectives. Perhaps what makes Roswell so fascinating is not simply the debris itself. It is the uncertainty, the existence of multiple explanations, the gaps in the historical record, and the way a relatively small event grew into one of the most famous mysteries of modern times. Unlike many legends, Roswell occurred during an age of newspapers, photography, and official documentation. Yet even with those records, complete agreement remains elusive. Today, Roswell is known around the world. The town has become closely associated with the mystery. Visitors arrive hoping to learn more about the famous incident. Museums explore competing interpretations. Researchers continue studying old documents, and the debate remains alive. In the deserts of New Mexico, a field of scattered debris sparked questions that have endured for generations. Questions about what was found, how it was explained, and whether the full story has ever truly been told. A mystery that began with a few strange fragments in the sand and became one of the most famous unsolved controversies of the modern era: the disappearance of Percy Fawcett. In 1925, one of the world's most experienced explorers walked into the Amazon rainforest and vanished. No confirmed trace of him was ever found. No verified message was received. And despite decades of searches, nobody has been able to say with certainty what happened. His disappearance became one of the greatest mysteries in exploration history, a story of ambition, adventure, and a relentless search for a lost city hidden deep within one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. The explorer's name was Percy Fawcett, and nearly a century after his disappearance, his fate remains unknown. Percy Fawcett was not an inexperienced adventurer chasing fantasies. By the time he entered the Amazon on his final expedition, he was already one of Britain's most respected explorers. For years, he had mapped remote regions of South America. He travelled through territories that few outsiders had ever seen. He endured dangerous rivers, tropical diseases, and harsh conditions that would have forced many others to turn back. The Amazon became his life's obsession, and within its vast forests, he believed something extraordinary was waiting to be discovered. Fawcett was convinced that an ancient city existed somewhere in the unexplored interior of Brazil. He referred to it simply as Zed. According to his theory, a sophisticated civilization had once flourished deep within the rainforest. Most scholars of the time dismissed the idea. The Amazon was widely viewed as an environment incapable of supporting large urban societies. To many experts, Fawcett's lost city sounded like a fantasy. Yet he remained convinced. Ancient accounts, local traditions, and scattered archaeological clues all seemed to point towards something hidden beyond the known frontier. In 1925, Fawcett launched what would become his final expedition. Accompanying him were his son Jack and Jack's close friend Raleigh Rimmel. Unlike earlier journeys, Fawcett deliberately kept the team small. He believed a larger expedition would attract unnecessary attention and create logistical difficulties. The three men entered the Brazilian wilderness carrying supplies and high hopes. Their goal was simple: reach the unexplored interior and search for evidence of the lost city. At first, communication continued normally. Messages arrived from the expedition as it advanced deeper into the forest. The last confirmed letter was sent from a location known as Dead Horse Camp, a site Fawcett had visited years earlier during a previous journey. In the letter, he appeared optimistic. The expedition was continuing as planned. Nothing seemed unusual. Then the messages stopped. Weeks passed, then months. No further contact arrived. The 3 explorers had vanished. At first, people assumed delays were responsible. The Amazon was enormous. Communication could be slow. Unexpected obstacles were common. Yet as time passed, concern grew. Eventually it became clear that something had gone wrong. The mystery captured public imagination around the world. Newspapers followed the story closely. The image of an explorer disappearing while searching for a lost city seemed almost too dramatic to be real. Soon, rescue missions began entering the rainforest. What followed only deepened the mystery. Over the decades, numerous expeditions attempted to locate Fawcett. Some searched for evidence of campsites. Others interviewed indigenous communities living within the region. Several searchers claimed to uncover clues, yet none produced definitive answers. Ironically, some rescue expeditions suffered tragedies of their own. Explorers became lost. Others died from disease, accidents, or conflicts within the wilderness. The search for Fawcett created almost as many mysteries as the disappearance itself. Countless theories emerged. One possibility is that the expedition encountered hostile conditions and simply succumbed to the dangers of the rainforest. The Amazon can be unforgiving. Disease, starvation, injury, and exhaustion have ended many journeys. Another theory suggests conflict with local groups. Some accounts from the region hint at encounters between explorers and indigenous communities, though evidence remains uncertain. Other explanations are far more speculative. Over the years, stories appeared claiming Fawcett survived and chose to remain in the jungle. Some alleged he discovered a hidden civilization. Others suggested he established a remote settlement and never returned. These claims have never been verified, but they help transform the explorer into a legendary figure. One reason the mystery endures is that the Amazon itself remains a place of discovery. Modern archaeology has revealed evidence that large and complex societies once existed throughout parts of the rainforest. Ancient earthworks, settlements, and engineered landscapes have been uncovered in recent decades. Ironically, some of these discoveries suggest that Fawcett may not have been entirely wrong about advanced civilizations existing within the Amazon. Whether he ever found evidence of them is another question entirely. Today, Percy Fawcett remains one of history's most famous missing explorers. His final expedition continues to inspire books, documentaries, and investigations. The rainforest has kept its secrets remarkably well. Somewhere within that immense wilderness, the answer may still exist. A forgotten campsite, a hidden clue, or evidence waiting to be discovered. Deep within the Amazon, an explorer searching for a lost city disappeared without a trace. His journey became legend. His fate became a mystery. And the story of Percy Fawcett remains one of the greatest unsolved disappearances in the history of exploration. The lost tomb of Alexander the Great. More than 2,000 years ago, one of history's greatest conquerors died far from home. His empire stretched across 3 continents. His armies had marched thousands of miles, and his name became legendary throughout the ancient world. Yet despite his fame, one of the most important questions in archaeology remains unanswered. Where is Alexander the Great buried? Countless rulers have been forgotten by history. Alexander was not one of them. His achievements are recorded in ancient texts. His battles are still studied today. His influence shaped civilizations for centuries, and yet the final resting place of one of the most famous individuals who ever lived remains unknown. It is a mystery that has puzzled historians, archaeologists, and explorers for generations. Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BC at only 32 years old. The circumstances of his death remain debated even today. Ancient sources describe illness, fever, and a gradual decline. Others suggested poisoning. The truth has never been fully established. What is certain is that his sudden death shocked the ancient world. The conqueror who seemed unstoppable was gone. Almost immediately, attention turned toward his burial. A ruler of Alexander's stature required an extraordinary tomb. Ancient accounts describe elaborate preparations. His body was reportedly preserved and placed within a magnificent funeral carriage designed to transport him across great distances. The journey itself became part of the story. Different factions within Alexander's empire competed for power after his death. Control of his remains carried enormous symbolic importance. Possessing the body of Alexander could strengthen political legitimacy. Eventually, the funeral procession was diverted to Egypt. There, one of Alexander's former generals, Ptolemy, secured possession of the body. This decision would shape the mystery for centuries to come. Alexander was eventually buried in Egypt, most likely in the city of Alexandria. At the time, Alexandria was rapidly becoming one of the most important cities in the ancient world. Founded by Alexander himself, it served as a fitting location for his tomb. Ancient writers describe a grand mausoleum visited by rulers, scholars, and travellers. The tomb became famous throughout the Mediterranean. Roman emperors reportedly travelled to see it. Julius Caesar may have known of its location. Augustus is said to have visited the site centuries after Alexander's death. For a time, the tomb was one of the most celebrated landmarks in the world. Then, something changed. Gradually, references to the tomb became less frequent. Political turmoil affected Alexandria. Natural disasters damaged parts of the city. Earthquakes struck the region. Buildings were destroyed, and over the centuries the exact location of Alexander's burial place faded from memory. By the Middle Ages, the once famous tomb had effectively disappeared. This disappearance created one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. How could the tomb of such an important figure simply vanish? Historians have spent generations searching for answers. Numerous theories have emerged. Many researchers believe the tomb still lies somewhere beneath modern Alexandria. This presents a major challenge. The ancient city lies beneath layers of later construction. Modern buildings cover much of the area. Excavation opportunities are limited. Entire sections of ancient Alexandria also disappeared beneath the Mediterranean Sea due to earthquakes and coastal changes. If the tomb exists there, reaching it may be extremely difficult. Other theories place the burial elsewhere. Some researchers have suggested locations outside Alexandria. Others argue that the tomb may have been destroyed long ago. A few even propose that Alexander's remains were moved multiple times during antiquity. Each theory attempts to explain the disappearance of a monument once known throughout the ancient world. Yet none has been proven. Over the years, several discoveries generated excitement. Archaeologists occasionally uncovered impressive tombs or structures that appeared promising. News headlines speculated about possible connections to Alexander. Yet each time, the evidence ultimately proved inconclusive. The mystery remained unsolved. Perhaps that is what makes the search so compelling. Unlike many historical puzzles, the objective is clear. Researchers know what they are looking for. The challenge is finding it. Somewhere, perhaps beneath a modern city, beneath layers of history, or beneath ground untouched for centuries, the answer may still exist. A tomb visited by emperors. A monument dedicated to one of history's most famous individuals. A place lost not through myth or legend, but through the passage of time itself. Today, archaeologists continue studying ancient texts, maps, and discoveries from Alexandria. New technologies offer fresh opportunities to explore hidden parts of the ancient city. Each excavation raises hopes. Each discovery provides new clues. Yet Alexander's tomb remains elusive. The conqueror who built one of the largest empires in history continues to guard one final secret. Somewhere, the final resting place of Alexander the Great may still survive, hidden beneath layers of history, forgotten by generations, and waiting to reveal one of the greatest archaeological discoveries the world has ever known. The Cyclopean Walls of Mycenae. On a rocky hill in southern Greece stand some of the most impressive stone walls of the ancient world. For more than 3,000 years they have overlooked the surrounding valleys. Empires have risen and fallen, kingdoms have disappeared, entire civilizations have been forgotten. Yet these enormous walls remain. Even today, visitors often have the same reaction when they first see them. How were they built? The stones are enormous. Some weigh several tons. Others are so large that they seem almost impossible to move without modern machinery. Ancient Greeks were so amazed by the structures that they believed ordinary humans could not have built them. Instead, they attributed the walls to the Cyclops, the giant one-eyed beings of mythology. And that is how these fortifications became known as the Cyclopean Walls. They surround the ancient city of Mycenae, a place that once stood at the centre of one of the most powerful civilizations in the Mediterranean world. The ruins of Mycenae are located in the northeastern Peloponnese region of Greece. Today the site sits among rolling hills covered with olive trees and rocky outcrops. But during the Late Bronze Age, this was one of the most important cities in the Greek world. From here, powerful rulers governed surrounding territories and controlled important trade routes. For centuries, Mycenae was a centre of wealth, influence, and military power. The city's most striking feature was its defences. The builders surrounded the settlement with massive stone walls that stretched around the hilltop. Some sections reach heights of more than 30 feet, others are several yards thick. The stones were fitted together with remarkable skill. No mortar was needed. The sheer weight of the blocks helped keep the structure stable. Even after thousands of years, much of the fortification still stands. To ancient visitors, the walls must have appeared nearly indestructible. The effort required to build them was extraordinary. Workers had to quarry enormous blocks of limestone from nearby locations. They then transported those stones uphill and positioned them with surprising precision. Exactly how they accomplished this remains a topic of debate. Archaeologists believe ramps, rollers, ropes, and large teams of labourers were likely involved. Whatever methods were used, the achievement was impressive. The walls demonstrate a level of organisation and engineering that few societies of the period could match. One of the most famous entrances to the city is known as the Lion Gate. Visitors approaching Mycenae still pass through it today. Above the gateway sits a carved stone relief depicting two lions standing on either side of a column. It is one of the oldest monumental sculptures in Europe. For thousands of years, the gate served as a symbol of the city's power. Anyone entering Mycenae would have immediately understood that they were approaching a place of great importance. The civilization that built Mycenae flourished between roughly 1600 and 1100 BC. Today, historians refer to these people as the Mycenaeans. They established settlements throughout mainland Greece and became influential traders across the eastern Mediterranean. Their ships travelled great distances, their goods reached foreign markets, and their rulers accumulated considerable wealth. Evidence of that wealth can still be seen within the ruins. Archaeologists have uncovered elaborate tombs, valuable artifacts, and finely crafted objects that reveal the prosperity of the city. For a long time, Mycenae existed mainly in legend. Ancient Greek stories spoke of powerful kings who ruled from the city. Among them was Agamemnon, the legendary leader associated with the Trojan War. For centuries, many scholars believed these stories belonged entirely to mythology. Then, during the 19th century, excavations revealed that a great Bronze Age city had indeed existed here. Suddenly, myths that once seemed purely fictional appeared connected to real places and real people. The discovery transformed the study of ancient Greece. Yet many mysteries remain. Researchers continue debating the exact role Mycenae played within the wider Bronze Age world. How powerful were its rulers? How far did their influence extend? And what ultimately caused the collapse of the civilization they created? Around 1200 BC, many societies across the eastern Mediterranean experienced periods of disruption and decline. The Mycenaean world was no exception. Cities were abandoned, trade networks weakened, and the age of great palaces came to an end. Mycenae survived for a time, but never regained its former importance. Over the centuries, the city gradually fell into ruin. Its buildings collapsed, its people moved elsewhere, and its history faded into legend. Yet the walls remained. Long after the palaces disappeared, long after the rulers were forgotten, the giant stones continued standing atop the hill, guarding the memory of a civilization that once dominated much of ancient Greece. Today, the Cyclopean walls remain among the most impressive monuments of the Bronze Age. They remind us that even in the distant past, people were capable of extraordinary achievements. Standing before them, it is easy to understand why ancient visitors believed giants must have been responsible. The stones seem almost too large, the construction almost too ambitious, and the survival of the walls almost miraculous. High above the Greek countryside stands a fortress built from enormous blocks of stone, a city linked to legend, a monument to one of Europe's earliest civilizations, and one of the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world, the ancient burial mounds of Bougon. In a quiet corner of western France, surrounded by farmland and rolling countryside, stand some of the oldest monuments in Europe. At first glance, they do not appear especially dramatic. There are no towering pyramids, no massive stone temples, no enormous statues rising above the landscape. Instead, the site consists of a series of grassy mounds scattered across the ground, simple shapes that blend naturally into the countryside. Yet beneath those mounds lies a story stretching back thousands of years. A story older than Stonehenge, older than the Egyptian pyramids, and connected to some of the earliest farming communities in Europe. These remarkable monuments are known as the Tumulus of Bougon, and they remain one of the most important prehistoric burial sites ever discovered in France. The site is located in western France, not far from the city of Poitiers. Today the landscape feels peaceful. Fields stretch across the horizon. Small roads wind through the countryside. It is difficult to imagine that people were building monumental structures here more than 5,000 years ago. Yet archaeological evidence suggests that generations of communities gathered in this area long before recorded history began. The most visible features of the site are the burial mounds themselves. Known as tumuli, these structures were built by piling earth and stone over burial chambers. Some are relatively small, others are surprisingly large. Together they form a complex that developed over many centuries. Each mound represents the efforts of ancient communities working together to honour their dead. The oldest sections of Bougon date back to around 4700 BC. That makes them among the oldest monumental burial structures in Europe. When these tombs were being constructed, many of the world's most famous ancient monuments did not yet exist. The builders belonged to early farming societies that had begun settling permanently across parts of Europe. They raised crops, kept livestock, and gradually transformed the landscape around them. One of the most fascinating aspects of Bougon is the complexity of its construction. At first glance, the mounds may appear simple, but excavations revealed carefully designed burial chambers hidden inside. Many were built using large stone slabs arranged to create passageways and enclosed spaces. Some chambers required enormous effort to construct. The stones had to be transported, positioned, and assembled without the help of metal tools or modern equipment. The achievement demonstrates a surprising level of planning and cooperation. Archaeologists have uncovered human remains within several of the tombs. These discoveries suggest that the site served as a burial place for generations. Some chambers were used repeatedly over long periods of time. People returned again and again to the same sacred locations. This continuity reveals the importance the site held within their communities. The dead were not forgotten. Their resting places remained central to the lives of those who came after them. Excavations also uncovered pottery, tools, ornaments, and other artifacts placed within the tombs. These objects provide valuable clues about the people who built the monuments. They suggest that burial ceremonies involved more than simply placing bodies inside chambers. The inclusion of grave goods indicates beliefs about memory, status, and perhaps even an afterlife. Yet because these communities left behind no written records, many details remain unknown. One mystery concerns who exactly was buried within the largest mounds. Were these important leaders, respected elders, members of powerful families? Archaeologists continue searching for answers. The tombs clearly held special significance, but the identities of many individuals buried there have been lost to time. Another question involves the construction process itself. Building these monuments would have required large groups of people working together. How were such projects organised? What motivated communities to invest so much effort into structures dedicated to the dead? The answers remain uncertain. Yet the scale of the site suggests that burial traditions played an important role in prehistoric society. For centuries, the mounds stood quietly within the French countryside. Generations passed by without fully understanding their origins. Some were damaged over time, others remained largely intact. Then archaeologists began carefully investigating the site. Their discoveries revealed that Bougon was far older than many people expected. Each excavation uncovered new evidence about Europe's distant past. The site gradually became one of the most important windows into prehistoric life. Today, visitors can walk among the ancient mounds much as people have done for thousands of years. The grassy hills still rise from the landscape, the stone chambers remain hidden within, and the mysteries surrounding their builders continue to inspire curiosity. Unlike castles or cathedrals, these monuments belong to a world that existed before written history. A world known only through archaeology, a world whose stories survive through stone, earth, and careful excavation. Beneath the fields of western France lie some of Europe's oldest burial monuments. Ancient tombs built by forgotten communities, sacred places used across generations, and one of the most remarkable prehistoric landscapes ever discovered in the ancient world. the lost fortress of Eboli. High in the mountains of southern Georgia, where winds sweep across volcanic plateaus and snow often lingers long into the year, stand the remains of a forgotten fortress. Today, the site appears remote. The surrounding landscape is rugged and largely untouched. Rocky hills stretch toward the horizon, ancient paths disappear into the highlands, and scattered across a mountaintop are the stone ruins of a place few people outside the region have ever heard of. Yet centuries ago, this isolated stronghold may have watched over important routes through the Caucasus, a place built for defence, a place built for survival, and a place whose origins remain partly hidden by time. This remarkable site is known as Eboli Fortress, and it remains one of Georgia's most intriguing archaeological mysteries. The fortress is located in the Java-Kheti Highlands, a region known for its dramatic landscapes and volcanic terrain. The area sits at a high elevation where winters can be harsh and conditions challenging. Even today, reaching the site requires a journey through remote mountain country, but for ancient builders, the location offered something valuable: protection. From the summit, wide stretches of the surrounding landscape can be seen in every direction. Anyone approaching the region would have been visible long before reaching the fortress itself. The site occupies the top of a volcanic hill. Massive stone walls follow the contours of the terrain. Large boulders were incorporated directly into the fortifications. Rather than fighting against the landscape, the builders used it to their advantage. The result was a strong defensive position that blended naturally into the mountain. At first glance, the fortress appears almost as though it grew out of the rocks themselves. One of the most fascinating aspects of Eboli is the way it was constructed. The walls consist of enormous stones stacked without mortar. Some of the blocks are surprisingly large. Their size immediately raises questions. How were they moved? How were they positioned? And who possessed the skills needed to build such a structure in such a remote location? Archaeologists believe the fortress may date back thousands of years, though parts of the site were likely used and modified by different groups over long periods of time. Like many ancient fortifications, Eboli may have witnessed multiple chapters of history. The interior of the fortress contains the remains of smaller stone structures. Researchers believe these spaces may have served as shelters, storage areas, or living quarters. People did not simply visit the fortress during emergencies. At least some individuals likely spent significant periods of time here. The stronghold functioned as a small community as well as a defensive position. This raises another interesting question. Who lived in such an isolated place? The answer remains uncertain. Written records are limited. Many details about the site's earliest inhabitants have been lost. What survives are the stones themselves, silent evidence of a society capable of organising labour, transporting building materials, and constructing substantial fortifications in a challenging environment. The surrounding region has a long history of human settlement. For thousands of years, people moved through the Caucasus using mountain passes and trade routes that connected different cultures. Communities developed in valleys, highlands, and plateaus throughout the region. Fortresses like Eboli may have played important roles in controlling movement across these landscapes. They provided security, they offered refuge during times of danger, and they demonstrated the presence of those who controlled the surrounding territory. Yet despite its impressive appearance, Eboli remains far less famous than many ancient fortresses elsewhere in the world. Part of the reason is its remote location. The site sits far from major tourist routes. Few visitors make the journey. As a result, the fortress has retained a sense of mystery. The ruins stand largely undisturbed beneath the open sky. Wind moves through the broken walls much as it has for centuries, and the mountain landscape remains remarkably similar to what ancient inhabitants would have known. Archaeologists continue studying the site in hopes of learning more about its history. Every survey reveals new details about the layout of the fortress and the people who built it. Yet many mysteries remain. Exactly when was the fortress first constructed? How large was the community that occupied it? And what events eventually led to its abandonment? The answers remain hidden among the stones. Perhaps that uncertainty is part of what makes Eboli so fascinating. Unlike famous historical monuments that have been extensively studied for generations, this fortress still feels connected to the unknown. It belongs to a chapter of history that is only partly understood, a reminder that many ancient stories remain unfinished. Today, the ruined walls continue overlooking the highlands of Georgia. The fortress no longer guards trade routes. Its inhabitants are long gone, yet the structure endures, a silent monument standing above the clouds, a forgotten stronghold built from stone, and one of the most remarkable lost fortresses hidden within the mountains of the Caucasus. The mystery of Maiden Castle. On a high hill overlooking the countryside of southern England lies one of the largest prehistoric fortresses ever built in Europe. From the ground, its scale is difficult to understand. Massive earthworks ripple across the landscape. Deep ditches cut through the hillside. Towering banks of earth surround the summit, and from above, the entire site resembles a giant maze carved into the countryside. For centuries, people have wondered about the community that built it. Why was such an enormous fortress needed? Who lived behind its defences? And what secrets still remain hidden beneath the hills of Dorset? This remarkable place is known as Maiden Castle, and it remains one of Britain's greatest archaeological mysteries. The site stands near the modern town of Dorchester in southern England. Today, the surrounding landscape is peaceful. Rolling green hills stretch toward the horizon. Fields cover much of the countryside. Visitors often arrive expecting to see the ruins of stone walls or ancient buildings. Instead, they find something very different. The fortress was built almost entirely from earth. Its creators reshaped the hill itself, digging enormous ditches and piling the excavated soil into towering defensive banks. Even after thousands of years, the result remains impressive. The origins of Maiden Castle stretch deep into prehistory. Long before the arrival of the Romans, communities were living across southern Britain. Over generations, people began building hill forts on elevated ground. These sites offered protection, visibility, and a sense of security. But Maiden Castle was unlike most others. It grew into something much larger, something far more ambitious. At its peak, the fort covered an area larger than many medieval castles. The entrance alone reveals the ingenuity of its builders. Rather than creating a simple gateway, they designed a complex series of banks, ditches, and winding approaches. Anyone attempting to enter would have been forced to navigate a carefully controlled path. Defenders positioned above could observe every movement. The design made the fortress difficult to attack and easy to defend. Even today, walking through the entrance feels surprisingly intimidating. Archaeologists believe thousands of people may have lived within the fort during certain periods. Excavations uncovered evidence of homes, storage areas, workshops, and daily activities. This was not simply a military stronghold. It was a thriving community. Families lived here. Children grew up here. People worked, traded, and gathered within its protective earthworks. For centuries, life continued atop the hill. One of the most fascinating discoveries came from excavations conducted during the 20th century. Researchers uncovered human remains that appeared to tell a dramatic story. Some skeletons showed signs of injuries caused by weapons. Arrowheads were found nearby. The discoveries led to a popular theory. Perhaps Maiden Castle had witnessed a violent battle. Perhaps invading forces had stormed the fortress during the Roman conquest of Britain. The idea captured public imagination. A final, a desperate defence. A dramatic clash between ancient Britons and Roman soldiers. For years, the story appeared convincing. Yet later research complicated the picture. Some archaeologists began questioning whether all of the injuries occurred during a single event. Others suggested the evidence might represent multiple incidents spread across different periods. The true story remains uncertain. Like many archaeological mysteries, the reality may be more complex than the legend. The arrival of the Romans brought enormous changes to Britain. New towns emerged, trade patterns shifted, and many traditional hill forts gradually lost their importance. Maiden Castle was no exception. Over time, the settlement declined. People moved elsewhere. The great earthworks remained, but the community that built them slowly disappeared. Nature began reclaiming the hill. Grass covered the defences. Buildings vanished. Only the shape of the fortress survived. For centuries, local people wondered about the origins of the enormous earthworks. Some believed giants had helped construct them. Others imagined lost armies and forgotten kings. Without archaeology, there was little way to know the truth. Only modern excavations began revealing the site's remarkable history. Yet many questions remain unanswered. Why did communities invest so much effort creating such a massive fortress? How many people lived here during its peak? What role did it play within the wider landscape of prehistoric Britain? And what really happened during its final centuries? Researchers continue searching for answers, Each new discovery reveals another piece of the puzzle. Today, Maiden Castle remains one of the most important prehistoric monuments in Britain. Visitors walking along its ancient banks can still appreciate the scale of the achievement. The earthworks dominate the landscape much as they did thousands of years ago. The hill continues watching over the Dorset countryside, silent, mysterious, and enduring. High above the fields of southern England stands a fortress built not from stone, but from earth itself. A monument created by forgotten communities, a stronghold surrounded by mystery, and one of the most extraordinary prehistoric sites in the ancient world, the cliffside mystery of Dún Aonghasa. On the edge of a towering sea cliff off Ireland's western coast stands one of the most dramatic ancient sites in Europe. The landscape feels almost otherworldly. Waves crash against the rocks hundreds of feet below. Strong Atlantic winds sweep across the island. And beyond the cliffs lies nothing but open ocean stretching toward the horizon. It is here, on the island of Inishmore, that an ancient stone fortress stands perched at the very edge of the world. No protective wall separates it from the cliff. No barrier prevents the land from dropping away into the sea. The location seems both breathtaking and puzzling. Why would anyone build a fortress in such a dangerous place? And what purpose did it serve? This remarkable site is known as Dún Aonghasa, and it remains one of Ireland's greatest archaeological mysteries. The fortress sits on the Aran Islands, a small group of islands located off Ireland's west coast. Today, the islands are known for their rugged beauty. Stone walls divide the landscape. Wildflowers grow between exposed limestone rocks, and the Atlantic Ocean dominates every view. Life here has always been shaped by the sea, yet thousands of years ago, people chose to build one of the most impressive prehistoric monuments in Ireland on this remote coastline. Dún Aonghasa is believed to have been constructed during the Iron Age, though parts of the site may be even older. The fort consists of several massive stone walls arranged in concentric rings around a central enclosure. Each wall adds another layer of defence. Visitors approaching the fortress must pass through a series of carefully designed entrances and barriers. The builders clearly understood how to create a strong defensive position, yet the most striking feature remains its location. The fortress ends abruptly at the edge of a sheer cliff. Standing there today can be an unsettling experience. One step too far would send a person plunging into the ocean below. Some researchers believe the original builders may not have intended the fort to sit quite so close to the edge. Over thousands of years, coastal erosion may have carried away portions of the landscape. If that is true, parts of the original structure may now lie beneath the Atlantic Ocean. The sea itself may have erased sections of the monument's history. One of the most unusual features of Dún Aonghasa is a defensive system known as the Cheval de Frise. Hundreds of upright stone slabs were placed in front of the outer walls. These stones create a jagged obstacle field that would have made it difficult for attackers to approach. Even today, walking through the area requires careful footing. The design reveals that defence was clearly an important consideration for the people who built the fort, yet archaeologists continue debating exactly who those people were. The builders left behind no written records, no names, no detailed history. Only stone walls and archaeological clues remain. As a result, much of Dún Aonghasa's story must be reconstructed through excavation and interpretation. Some researchers believe the site served primarily as a fortress, a place of refuge during periods of conflict. Others suggest it may have held ceremonial or religious significance as well. Its dramatic location overlooking the ocean certainly seems capable of inspiring spiritual importance. The truth may involve both possibilities. Many ancient sites fulfilled multiple roles within their communities. Excavations have uncovered evidence that people lived and worked within the enclosure. Animal bones, tools, and traces of everyday life suggest the site was more than a simple lookout point. Families may have occupied the fortress during certain periods. Community gatherings may have taken place here. Important decisions may have been made within its walls. The fortress was likely an important centre for the people living on the islands. One reason Dún Aonghasa continues to fascinate visitors is the atmosphere of the place. The combination of ancient stonework and dramatic scenery creates an unforgettable experience. Standing near the cliff edge, it is easy to imagine how isolated the site would have felt thousands of years ago. The Atlantic stretches endlessly westward. Storms roll in from the ocean, and the fortress remains fixed between land and sea. Few archaeological sites possess such a powerful sense of place. Yet despite decades of study, many mysteries remain. Why was the fort built in this exact location? What events took place within its walls? How much of the original site has been lost to coastal erosion? And what did the fortress mean to the people who created it? The answers remain uncertain. Like the ocean below, Dunaugasse continues to guard many of its secrets. Today, it stands as one of Ireland's most important prehistoric monuments. Visitors travel from around the world to experience its unique setting. The stone walls still overlook the Atlantic, the cliffs still rise above the sea, and the mystery endures. On the edge of Ireland's western frontier stands an ancient fortress surrounded by wind, stone and ocean. A stronghold built by forgotten people, a monument perched above the Atlantic, and one of the most dramatic archaeological mysteries in the ancient world. The giant dolmen of Bagneux. In the Loire Valley of western France stands a monument so unusual that many visitors struggle to believe its age. It is not a castle, it is not a cathedral, and it was not built by the Romans. Instead, it was constructed thousands of years before any of those things existed. A massive stone chamber assembled from enormous slabs of rock, a structure that has survived for more than 4 millennia, and one of the largest prehistoric tombs in Europe. Known as the Dolmen de Bagneux, this remarkable monument stands as a reminder of a world that existed long before written history. A world whose people left behind no names, no books, and no records explaining how they accomplished such an extraordinary feat. Yet the monument remains, silent, ancient, and filled with mystery. The dolmen is located near the town of Saumur in western France. Today, roads and houses surround parts of the area. Visitors can easily reach the site. But thousands of years ago, the landscape looked very different. Dense forests covered much of the region. Small farming communities lived across the countryside, and generations of people worked together to build monuments that would outlast them all. The Dolmen de Bagneux dates back to the Neolithic period, a time when agriculture was transforming human society across Europe. People were no longer living entirely as hunters and gatherers. Permanent settlements were becoming more common. Communities were growing larger, and some groups began constructing impressive monuments from stone. Among the most remarkable of these were dolmens, large burial chambers built using enormous stone slabs. The Dolmen de Bagneux is one of the finest examples ever discovered. At first sight, the monument is surprisingly large. The chamber stretches more than 60 feet in length. Massive upright stones support equally enormous capstones overhead. Some of these stones weigh many tons. Standing inside the structure today, visitors often ask the same question archaeologists have considered for generations. How did prehistoric builders move stones of this size? The people who constructed the dolmen had no cranes, no engines, no modern machinery. Yet somehow they transported these enormous blocks, positioned them with remarkable accuracy, and created a structure that has survived for thousands of years. Researchers believe large teams of workers likely used ropes, wooden rollers, sledges, and carefully planned techniques. Even so, the project would have required an enormous amount of labour and coordination. The achievement speaks to the determination and organisation of the communities involved. The purpose of the dolmen appears to have been funerary. Excavations conducted over the years uncovered human remains and artefacts associated with burial practices. The chamber served as a tomb, but not necessarily for a single individual. Many Neolithic burial monuments were used repeatedly across generations. Families or entire communities may have returned to the same sacred place for centuries. The dead remained connected to the living through these monuments. The dolmen became a place of memory, a place where the past was preserved. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Dolmen de Bagneux is the effort invested in its construction. The builders could have buried their dead in far simpler ways. Instead, they created something monumental, something designed to endure. This suggests that burial rituals carried deep cultural significance. The monument was not simply a grave. It was a statement, a visible reminder of identity, ancestry, and community. Yet because these people left behind no written records, much about them remains unknown. Archaeologists can study their tools, pottery, and architecture, but their beliefs must be reconstructed through clues scattered across the landscape. Why did they choose this location? What ceremonies took place here? What stories were told as the monument was being built? Those answers have been lost to time. The mystery deepens when considering the sheer age of the structure. When the Dolmen de Bagneux was first constructed, the Bronze Age had not yet begun. Iron tools did not exist. Many of the civilizations familiar to us today were still far in the future, and yet people here were already capable of organizing large-scale construction projects that continue to impress modern visitors. The monument challenges assumptions about prehistoric societies. It reminds us that complexity and ambition existed long before written history. Over the centuries, countless generations encountered the dolmen. Some understood it as an ancient tomb. Others created legends to explain its existence. As knowledge of its true origins faded, stories often filled the gaps. This happened throughout Europe, where many megalithic monuments became connected to giants, supernatural beings, or forgotten heroes. The enormous stones seemed too impressive to have been moved by ordinary people. The Dolmen de Bagneux inspired the same sense of wonder. Today, archaeologists continue studying the monument and others like it across France. Each discovery helps reveal more about the communities that built these remarkable structures. Yet many mysteries remain unsolved. The monument still guards secrets that may never be fully understood. Standing beneath the great stone slabs, it is easy to feel connected to a distant past, a past separated from us by thousands of years, yet still visible in stone. In the heart of western France stands a giant tomb built by forgotten people, a monument older than kingdoms and empires, a chamber raised from enormous stones, and one of the most extraordinary prehistoric structures ever created in Europe, the Lost Citadel overlooking the Euphrates. On a rocky peninsula, rising above the waters of the Euphrates River, stands the remains of a fortress that has witnessed thousands of years of history. The location is extraordinary. Steep cliffs drop toward the river below. The surrounding landscape is rugged and dramatic, and from the summit it is possible to see for miles in every direction. For centuries, this was one of the most strategic positions in the region. Armies passed beneath its walls, merchants travelled along nearby routes, pilgrims visited its churches, and rulers fought to control it. Yet despite its remarkable history, few people outside Turkey have ever heard of it. Today, the fortress is known as Rumkale, and its story is one of the most fascinating forgotten chapters along the Euphrates. Rumkale is located in southeastern Turkey, where the Euphrates cuts through a landscape of hills and rocky outcrops. The fortress occupies a naturally defensible position. Cliffs protect much of the site. The river creates an additional barrier. Anyone attempting to approach would have faced significant challenges. Long before modern borders existed, this location offered both security and control. The origins of the site stretch far into the past. Archaeologists believe people recognized the strategic importance of the location thousands of years ago. Different civilizations occupied the region over time. Each left traces behind. As empires rose and fell, the fortress continued to serve as a valuable stronghold, overlooking one of the most important rivers in the ancient Near East. One of the most remarkable aspects of Rumkale is how many different cultures became connected to the site. Romans occupied the region. Byzantines strengthened its defences. Armenian rulers later controlled the fortress. Various Islamic dynasties also left their mark. Few places in the region experienced such a long and varied history. The fortress became a crossroads where different traditions, religions, and political powers intersected. At its height, Rumkale was much more than a military outpost. Within its walls stood homes, religious buildings, storage facilities, and administrative structures. People lived here permanently. Families raised children here. Merchants arrived with goods from distant places. Religious leaders carried out their duties. The fortress functioned as a small community perched above the river. Among the site's most important historical connections is its association with the Armenian Church. For a period of time, Rumkale served as an important religious centre. Churches were established within the fortress. Manuscripts were copied and preserved. Religious leaders gathered here while political uncertainty affected other parts of the region. The citadel became both a spiritual refuge and a defensive stronghold. The natural setting played an important role in the fortress's success. The Euphrates was one of the great rivers of the ancient world. For thousands of years it served as a route for communication, trade, and travel. Controlling a position above the river provided enormous advantages. The inhabitants of Rumkale could monitor movement through the region. and maintain connections with neighbouring communities. The fortress occupied a position that was both isolated and connected. One of the most fascinating features of the site is the engineering visible throughout the ruins. Builders adapted their structures to the landscape with remarkable skill. Walls follow the contours of the cliffs. Passageways take advantage of natural rock formations. Defensive systems were carefully integrated into the terrain. Rather than reshaping the environment, the builders worked with it. The result was a fortress that seemed almost part of the mountain itself. Yet despite its strength, Rumkale could not escape the changes that transformed the region over the centuries. Political power shifted repeatedly. Trade routes evolved. New cities emerged elsewhere. The importance of the fortress gradually declined. Although it remained occupied for long periods, its role became less significant as the centuries passed. Eventually, much of the site was abandoned. The once busy citadel grew quiet. Its walls remained, but the life within them faded away. Today, visitors often arrive by boat, approaching the fortress from the water below. The journey offers a striking view of the cliffs and fortifications rising above the river. Even in ruin, the site possesses a powerful presence. The stone walls still dominate the landscape. The river continues flowing beneath the cliffs, and the sense of history remains impossible to ignore. Archaeologists continue studying Rumkale and the surrounding region. Each discovery adds new details to the story of the fortress and the people who lived there. Yet many mysteries remain. How much of the original settlement still lies hidden beneath the ground? What stories were recorded within its churches and libraries? And what traces of earlier civilizations remain undiscovered beneath the later structures? The answers may still be waiting among the ruins. High above the Euphrates stands a forgotten citadel shaped by centuries of history. A fortress claimed by empires, a refuge for communities and pilgrims, and one of the most remarkable lost strongholds in the ancient world.